All right, we're jamming out today. Welcome to the Tech Town Square, folks. I'm your host, James Azar. Joining me, my very
hello, everybody,
powerful co-host from the other side of the pond, although now he's on the right side of the pond, Eddie Doyle. What's happening?
Although on the East Coast, and if anybody's tuning in from the West Coast, forgive me. It's all good. We're having fun here. It's competition all the time, right? Yes, I came across to the right side of the pond many years ago. I've been in my honeymoon phase ever since. It's been 30 years, you know. But hey, I love playing out in the new world. James and I have got so much to talk about, as always. And there's a big focus that James picked up on a text to me earlier today saying, let's talk about Myanmar. So I think that's going to be a big focus for us in this conversation. Myanmar has cut their internet off from a military coup. I've got a little bit of a background on it in case anybody isn't familiar with what's happening. We can catch you up in about 2 minutes. James, what else have we got going on today?
So welcome, Tech Town Square. This is the open debate, Technology Town Square. Feel free to comment, subscribe, follow us. We're here. We're back. Another week. The show is live at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time each and every single week. So you can tune in, you can comment, say hello, watch, and contribute. The whole point of the podcast here is for you to contribute, to let us know what you think about the topics we're going to talk about. We're going to talk about Mynamar and the tech shutdown, the internet shutdown that's been going on there that I think is very important because this is a bit scary in a lot of different ways, and we're going to talk a little bit about that. So we'll discuss the Mynamar coup. So if you have not subscribe now. Follow us on our YouTube channel at CyberHub Podcast. The Tech Town Square is a playlist over there. You can tune in, watch it, get updated. We've started this show kind of a month ago and 2 months ago now, and we're loving every minute of it. So, Miguel, good evening, hello, and welcome.
Hello, Miguel. Fantastic. Thanks for tuning in
to the town square. So, Eddie, guide us in your royal highness fashion of what's going on in this small Asian nation of Myanmar, formerly known as Burma, that's causing a lot of people in the world to look at it and go, whoa.
Fantastic. Well, so Aung San Suu Kyi. Okay, there you go. Got it right. It's a tough one to pronounce, but she's been in the news a lot over the last decade or so. I remember being at a U2 pop concert in Edmonton, Alberta many years ago. And Bono, he's got to do his whole thing there, right? And I've got a little bit of a shut up and sing attitude about that. But I must say, it did actually bring it to my attention. This was actually about 20 years ago. At the time, she was still under house arrest. And then came out and was democratically elected to prime minister or president in Myanmar. Actually, I'm not sure. Is it prime minister or president? Doesn't matter. Leader, political leader through a democratic process. I think that was maybe roughly 6-7 years ago. Then there's been trouble, as there always is in various different countries. So she survived a few different scandals. I think for a while there was a I don't want to say attempted genocide, but displacement of certain religious factions within Myanmar that would put a bit of a stain on her short history. But then even more recently, the military decided to take over in a coup, a military coup. They have charged her with several different things. Just yesterday, there was an additional charge, and the charge is accused of breaking national disaster law. Just yesterday. And for the most part, BBC, the international, news and media conglomerates are saying these are just trumped up charges. No one's really understanding what a national disaster law is, but she's being accused of breaking it. She was held in a private court through this accusation on it. So, people weren't there to be able to witness this, to be able to come to her aid or really understand what they're doing. Now, at the time of the coup, and what we want to focus on the Tech Town Square, is the fact that in order for the military to successfully take over that country, they cut off the internet. And so imagine for a moment, this is a post I put out over LinkedIn, if you didn't have internet for a day, your life would really come to a screeching halt. Now, in Western countries, we depend on the internet for so many things: light bulb, refrigerators, never mind just doing our work, never mind staying in touch with our friends. And we sort of see staying in touch with our friends as a nice to have, almost must have. We can pick up the phone and phone people. We have other ways of having mildly good engagement. But in countries such as Myanmar, and countries such as India, and many African countries, this is the only way. Social media. James, in fact, you brought up on one of our previous podcasts that, is it in Africa or in India, where they preload Facebook on smartphones and they say, hey, if you want to get the news or if you want to get to the internet, this is how you do it. And so the people there who are, I think, much more dependent from a life and death situation on social media and on the internet have now had that taken away from them. Okay, in addition to that, at Yangon, the capital, Yangon, they have the military stronghold, by the way, is in Nipdor, close to Yangon. At Yangon, doctors and nurses started the idea of not working with the new regime by doing this thing called roadblocks. So people are doing roadblocks, but they're driving, blocking the road, popping the hood of their car, okay? And they're basically saying, oh, my car doesn't work. And this is their way of not getting hurt by the military, because they certainly could be. Now, of course, it's a total farce. The military does know it, but this is the way people are saying, we're not going to cooperate with this new military government, that the people are saying this, and they're attempting to cause massive disruption. And be it that it came from doctors and nurses first, essential services, it's really baffling to the military. So far, there hasn't been any bloodshed or massive bloodshed. There have been 547 other people detained in a word I learned, incommunicado. Incommunicado means no lawyer, they are hidden, and it's basically a forced disappearance. So 547 people, I don't know who those people are. I would imagine they are strong supporters and government positioned people with Aung San Suu Kyi. And that is probably a pretty good update. So here we are, and I was just chatting with James before the show. James, you were telling me that Twitter, Facebook, these things are still not reenacted in Myanmar.
Yeah, they're all blocked. So before we move on to that, hey, James McQuiggan, the one, the only, the James, say hello, sir. And Nora, hello, Nora. Thank you for tuning in to today's show. So there's something very, so yeah, Facebook and Twitter are shut down. Internet's completely shut down in Myanmar. But if you want to know how people discovered the coup, I've got a really funny video I want to share. So part of how people found out about the coup is, do we want to trust the BBC on this one? What do you say? We'll take the BBC for this one. And
yeah, I used to trust them, not so much anymore, but they're kind of the least of the evils. And Miguel, we're going to get to your comment in just a moment. Add a little, because you typed that, Miguel, when I was saying something. So just add a little context to that comment, and James will bring it up. All right.
So yeah, it's very interesting here. I'm gonna share it here in just a moment. This is how some people in Myanmar found out about the coup, according to some social media platforms that I was on and looking at. So give me just a moment here. I want to bring up this tab, and all right, you guys see my Chrome tab, right?
That's good.
This is an aerobic instructors, and the military coup's going on behind her.
And she doesn't know, hey, like, so she's just doing a video every day, kind of like this is her thing. And then all of a sudden, is that what is going on here? She's going to be famous. She's at no time she'll have a full-time.
The Southeast Asian country's military seized control of the government from civilian leaders after claiming its recent election was rigged. Military leaders supported the opposition and claimed the takeover was legal under the Constitution. The country's election commission says there is no.
So that's how some people found out about the coup in Myanmar. literally some people were cut off. They didn't see anything. And then lo and behold, some people were watching this aerobics video, which overlooks the bridge that leads into the government complex and the military coup. So Mynamar is very interesting because it shut down the internet, but it's not the first coup attempt to shut down the internet and shut down all communications. If you remember a while ago in Turkey, I think the Turkey coup was 2016, if I'm not mistaken here. Erdogan did the same exact thing. He shut down all the internet in the city, and they even went into media. They went into the media stations and made them so that they didn't advertise. That was July 15th, 2016. There was an attempt carried out by a faction within the Turkish armed forces to take over Turkey. They put tanks on bridges into Istanbul and other parts of the country, and then Erdogan essentially mobilized, and they were worried that they were going to assassinate Erdogan, and so they mobilized them, and he did a Facebook Live, and that's literally what saved him. He was the only one that was allowed to do Facebook in the country at the time.
No kidding. Yeah.
And this is really interesting because as we look at this, it's the idea that the internet, which is kind of now a basic human right, being taken away from people, very concerning. So Miguel here says never seen again.
I think that was at the time when I said 547 people are detained incommunicado. I think he typed that as I was mentioning that point. Thanks, Miguel.
Yeah, and Nora, thank you again. And Nora goes, wow. So yeah, I mean, this fitness instructor is doing her workout video. Meanwhile, a military coup going on behind her. And she's like, all right, let's keep working out. There's a bunch of funny memes, by the way. This was like an internet meme. And it still is. Like, there are some really funny memes around this. From a town square perspective, though, I do want to take this into the direction, which I think we all want to talk about, which is the idea that what happens when the town square is no longer allowed to exist? And this is what's happening. So when you look at Mynamar, I am going to share some information. Some of it I've gotten through some intel contacts I have where, I phoned them today when I thought this would be a good topic to talk about and got some information. Some of it is stuff that I'll source and reference for many of you. So when they shut down, they're using the Chinese firewall concept in Mynamar, which is essentially they've copied the China, Saudi Arabia, Turkey, and Vietnam internet firewall. It's a little bit less sophisticated, but nonetheless, right now they're blocking out a lot of traffic, and they're making sure that people don't get information in and out of there. Furthermore, there's a lot of protesters on the streets that are protesting this coup. And it's extremely significant because their way of organizing isn't really available. Furthermore, one of the concerns from several activists that are part of the group that's protesting this is, will social media platforms cooperate with this illegitimate coup takeover from the military and share names of people who are organizing things through Facebook and through other platforms, because some of them are technologically savvy and are using VPNs and other ways to beat the firewall. Even the Great China Firewall can be beat, right? So there's that aspect of it. And that brings us into the tech censorship piece, which is critical, which is on what side, do these platforms lie? And then who are they really going to back? Because I think Facebook and Twitter are in a conundrum here. Like, the hypocrisy is unbelievable. So, hey, Mr. Conservative in America, you can't say that. You're banned. But hey, Mynamar, you can't block all these people. They're fighting for freedom.
Yeah, it's a real irony, isn't it? And I think the reality is, this is going to sound really sinister. I actually really believe it. I think that these companies will bet on the horse that wins. That's what they'll do. The reality of it is, if they thought that the coup was going to last 20 years, they'll work with that government, that coup,
Right. The
right?
question is though, if I think if they do work with the government, they're gonna be in a position where it's gonna be very, very difficult for them to pull out of it. Meaning, to be able to get anything remotely effective from the people there, because the people aren't going to trust them anymore, and they're going to look at alternatives. And Parler's back online. Parler came back online this week.
Do you know, I was listening to Elon Musk on Rogan's podcast this morning about Starlink, right? So what he's doing is, for those that don't know, I wasn't very much aware of this, is building a satellite system around the globe to give 24/7 complete global coverage, including the North Pole, where there are research centers and penguins, but including the North Pole, so that everybody gets broadband internet everywhere. Now, this is interesting. So I also heard from the BBC that the United Nations is going to work with try to work this out and support Aung San Suu Kyi, the democratically elected leader of Myanmar. And I'm starting to think this problem would go away, I think. Now, challenge me on this, James, or challenge me on this, people. I'd love to see your comments. If you had this kind of Starlink broadband internet where everybody was able to, let's say, just pay as you go, right? If that was the system, and $1 a day, whatever, it doesn't matter, and then everybody had their internet, you take the strength and power out of the hands of the few and put it into the many, so that the military couldn't do that, so they couldn't cut off the town square. Now, you still have a problem with these big social media companies, power in the hands of the few. We've spoken a lot about that on the Text Town Square. I think we'll shelf that for an in-depth dialogue today, because we're bound to come back to it. But that to me would be very, very interesting, because then, you see this aerobics instructor rolling down the street, and she'll be quickly getting on her phone saying, hey guys, look at this happening. Or even before the fact, I would imagine there are factions within the military that are obeying orders but not pleased. In fact, I've got to imagine that the majority of the rank and file soldiers are simply following orders and perhaps not pleased with this. And so, not cutting off the internet, or not having the ability to cut off the internet, people would want to leak information. Whistleblowers are very popular. It's very trendy to have whistleblowers today. I don't mean to roll my eyes out of disrespect to true whistleblowers. It's just that there's a difference between whistleblowers and whistleblowers. So that might be amazing. And so we should trend toward a world in which, we can democratize internet access to people.
So here's an interesting aspect. You brought up two things here, and I want to address them. One, the UN. The UN is about as useless things on planet Earth are. The UN has done nothing of value in the last 3 or 4 decades. And if you want examples for that, how about a dictator in Syria who was chemically bombing his own citizens, have killed over 800,000 of them, women and children, and not a finger lifted by the UN outside of writing condemning statements and so forth.
One of the greatest genocides in our generation in
China.
Congo. Oh, China as well. There's another one. Exactly.
Right, with the Uyghur Muslims in China, in Western China. So the UN has zero credibility anymore when it comes to this kind of stuff. And I think, by the way, this is why I love being in tech and in cyber. Like, for all of those watching, like, this is what we do. This is what we live for. I can't tell you that since the SKU started, we've deployed more tools for people to get communication, whether it be through apps, whether it be through the dark web, whether it be through all kinds of places, so that the people who are fighting this are able to get information out of the country, because what's really important is to get the information of what's going on out of the country. If you don't have any information about what's going on, it tends to dwindle down the movement, because they're able to shut it down. They're able to say, we're no longer doing this, right? Like, we've got this under control. People go in their homes, they lock their doors, they hide. Now what we have something absolutely amazing. We have smart technological people on the Mynamar side, and we have an awesome cybersecurity community that believes in actual freedom. And all of these people, right, are all like on our back, on our feet, standing up, ready to give them some level of infrastructure. Here's my problem with the Starlink idea that Elon Musk has. Governments are still going to want to control it. No government is going to allow its citizens an unequivocal, uncensored access to the internet. And if anyone disagrees with me, feel free to say it.
Doesn't it just beam down, though? It hits the whole country.
Yeah, but the same thing with, people said that, drones or anything like that would be very hard for the government to regulate. And then they develop a technological tool that, stops the signal or slows it down or, decrypts it. I mean, at the end of the day, what's beaming down is beaming back up. And that's data in transport. So they're going to get access to it because there's going to be someone somewhere that's going to develop something to look at that. And so, and especially considering the fact that if you do that globally, and now all of a sudden you've got free internet to a bunch of people, and some of them are really bad people that want to do really bad things to really good people, it's going to be very hard to stop them. And again, intelligence agencies aren't really, the first thing the NSA would do, would be to find a way to like hack this thing and stream all the data. The Chinese would be on it like white on rice at that point, right? It'd just be quick, like they're just take it. So, it's a grandiose idea. It's a grandiose idea, but it's not one that's going to work. Danielle, we've missed you, Danielle. Hello. Government and uncensored in the same sentence. Yeah, I know. I said it, Danielle. I did. I've said it. I've said government and uncensored in the same sentence. The government will never let anything go uncensored. I think a lot of people who, live in first world countries like the US or UK or Canada, France, Germany, we have a level of freedom but we still have a level of censorship. There's still some censorship that goes on, unfortunately. But this to me, Eddie, is the most interesting aspect of what's going on here, because now what we're seeing is the idea to shut down the internet is becoming more and more common. So let's name all the countries that have shut down the internet in the last decade, and let's see what they've been able to accomplish by shutting down their countries. Okay?
Should we start with
China has the Great Firewall.
Right.
They now empowered it in Hong Kong. They're essentially quelling the unrest in Hong Kong. We know that for the next 4 years, the current U.S. administration is going to be very bearish towards China. And so there's nothing that's going to be done. There are people of Hong Kong. We are with you. Free Hong Kong. But at the same time, unfortunately, our government and our foreign policy is going to disappoint you. But don't let that impact the rest of the people. I know a lot of people here that believe in a free Hong Kong. So there's one country, China, that's done this in Hong Kong. Russia did this in Crimea. When they took over Crimea, they shut down Crimea. They did the same thing when they launched the invasion in the Ukraine and took over Donetsk. They shut down all the internet there. So there's two superpowers that did this as part of what they've done. Syria did the same exact thing early on in the revolution, and then they could no longer shut down the internet because they were using the same internet and they didn't have the technological capability to shut down the citizen internet and not the military internet. Their military and civilian infrastructure are built one within the other. Okay. Tunisia and Algeria and Egypt all tried to do that during the Arab Spring. All failed, right? And when they did it, it was too late. And then after that, the people who overthrew them, they did the same exact thing. Miguel brings up Venezuela. Absolutely. In Venezuela, they are known to shut down the internet for hours upon hours. In fact, sometimes days upon days. Cuba used to do something similar, I believe. Turkey, North Korea. North Korea doesn't have internet. Like the people of North Korea, Danielle, don't have internet. North Korea has an intranet.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, they have an intranet, which is more internal, and only specific people have an internet.
It's all songs about the dear leader.
Yes. You know, which is, by the way, which would be great. Can you imagine? I mean,
yeah, well, that's right. You get an intranet and you're a dictator. That's the best tool ever, right? There's just constant, dear leader is amazing, being blasted at you. That's George Orwell's antithesis dream.
Yeah, you've got North Korea, Turkey, Saudi Arabia. Anytime there's unrest in Saudi Arabia, and I know that Saudi Arabia is an ally, but we're in the town square and we're allowed to criticize allies. So Saudi Arabia, my friends over in Saudi, I have a lot of friends in Saudi. Salamu alaikum. Love you guys. But at the same time, anytime there's any dissent in Saudi Arabia, they shut down the internet. Now, Saudi Arabia has a very unique infrastructure, especially from an internet perspective. It's not like Syria. It's highly vested. So they're able to shut it down by regions. So they can literally shut down a portion of the country off the internet and keep everyone else online. And network traffic would look extremely similar to what it was before.
Yeah.
Because they're able to artificially inflate network traffic.
You reminded me of something with Saudi. I want to throw this little bit in because it's just amusing and terrifying all at the same time. They also have, so you remember Kamal Khashoggi, that's right, Kamal Khashoggi.
Yeah, Jamal Khashoggi, yeah.
Yeah, he was assassinated in the
Turkey.
Saudi.
Allegedly.
That's right. I said allegedly, absolutely, in the Saudi embassy in Turkey. And this was, of course, speaking against the royal family. Now, they also have, there was a brilliant documentary by, I forget the gentleman's name, but he did the documentary Icarus, which exposed the drug doping scandal in Russia. He did another documentary called, I think, Dissident. I'll Google it in just a second when James is talking. And what they showed there is that they have armies of people, employees in Saudi, who will send out tweets to drown out any dissident voices who are speaking against the royal family. So that's how seriously they take the control of that nation and their brand as the royal family. And there are actually armies of these people who will tweet, we love these guys, royal family, amazing. Look at all the wonderful things they're doing. To suppress and push down any tweets from people like Kamal Khashoggi's followers. Really interesting. And it's just their way of muscling the algorithm back down so that any dissenting voices don't rise to the top. So that's one level of control. And the other level, and I didn't actually know that the Saudis did this, James, is, of course, cutting off the internet. Yeah.
Yeah, so I'll say this. Saudi Arabia is a little different. Okay, it's an ally, so oftentimes people fear to criticize them. I realize that if they hear this, they may revoke my visa to visit.
Yeah,
but at the same time, that's part of the town square. It's to be able to express this stuff. And the show's not about Saudi, but it's about countries who weaponize the internet against their own citizens. Vietnam does this beyond Saudi. We know that in other parts of the world, you have countries that monitor web traffic significantly, and that's a really, that's a really big thing for a lot of them. But the idea of shutting down the internet, so we see that here in the States. So if you talk to anyone who's been canceled by major social media, who've been kicked off of, like, let's say, Facebook and Twitter, and they don't really need a LinkedIn profile, because, LinkedIn's a professional platform. Thank God for the existence of LinkedIn in the last year. I literally believe that LinkedIn has kept my sanity for the last year. And a shameless little push, but in March next month, I'll have Jeff Belkamp, the CISO over at LinkedIn, on the CISO Talk podcast.
Sweet.
And I will be thanking him for the entire time.
Yeah. Keeping all the garbage out of LinkedIn.
For keeping all the garbage out of LinkedIn. Right. Extensively. But so when we see this kind of shutdown of the internet, right? And I think a lot of people who are watching and listening right now, when you look at this, let's play an exercise. You hear something in the news, you see something on Twitter, and then everything goes silent. What is your gut reaction? What do? Best comments. Best comment gets a $10 Amazon gift card. Okay.
James is generous today. Good man. Yeah, it's a good question.
How do you get information? If all of your social media is down, you have no way of getting information. None of the news sites are updating anything. The internet's just paused.
Right.
You refresh, and the only thing you see is yesterday's news. You don't see anything from today. What do you do?
Yeah. Yeah. And what are you thinking automatically, right?
Right.
Out the gate. This major red flag. If this would happen in the United States to me, it would be a major red flag. I start phoning up my neighbors and colleagues, and I say to them, as I sometimes do, "Is our VPN down?" This kind of conversation, and start hi. Yeah, yeah, that's right.
Danielle would hide under a blanket. But what really would you do? What would you do, right? If you woke up tomorrow and there was no internet?
Here's what I would do. This is a great question. I love this. I love what Einstein called thought experiments, right? Okay, so let's have this thought experiment. I would immediately develop a phone tree. So you remember the old school phone trees from before the internet? So a phone tree, for those that I'm not that old, so I would imagine a few people on here would know. Let's say, for example, when my first daughter was born, and internet was still kind of like, so-so, right? And not everybody was using it, certainly the schools weren't. If a kid didn't turn up to school, there was an immediate phone tree, right? This teacher phones that parent. He can't get a hold of that parent. There's another person to call, and then that person calls two people. And then those two people call two people, and they have this on a pre-printed piece of paper. It's called the phone tree, and all I had was the two people that I need to call on my pre-printed piece of paper. You could have the whole tree, but you can see kind of like a multi-level marketing scam, right? It immediately builds down into a massive pyramid. So what I would do is I would immediately phone up somebody outside of the country, right? So I have citizenship in Canada and England and France, therefore Europe. And I would phone all of those places, and I'd say, okay, do this. I need you to phone at least two people, see if they can figure out what's going on, and get back to me. So I would engage some kind of phone tree and see, and I would give a time limit to it. What else would I do here? And I would have some kind of code word in advance in case there was a massive military problem in the country that I was living in, to say, look, if this is something you want to talk about on the airwaves, you would say, hey, Eddie, I know you love spaghetti, whatever. And we would go from there. All right, that's what I would do. We've got some comments rolling in. Miguel,
all right, so Almi said censor. Maybe, but what would you do if you woke up and none of your social media worked and you couldn't get any news, and all of a sudden there's no cars in the streets and you just see police and military vehicles everywhere?
I want to ask Danielle a question. Yeah, Miguel, talk about that in a second. But Danielle, what do you mean by recursive? Just type that into the chat there, my friend.
So that's very interesting. My house would go crazy. You know what I would do is I would probably go into my gun safe, put on my vest.
Then make the phone tree.
I wouldn't even do a phone tree at that point, because I don't know. I don't know who to trust. I don't know who's listening on the phone line. Who says the phone line isn't being listened to for the resistance?
Right. Yeah.
So I would probably, arm myself to the teeth. I'd be straight, I am legend, Will Smith, just.
Judging by the pandemic we just had, you better stock up on toilet paper, James. Come on. Right. That's clearly the essential.
The good news is a lot of people that are going to freak out and jump in their cars, the last thing they're going to remember to take is toilet paper. So I can just, randomly walk into homes but luckily we've stocked up on enough toilet paper this pandemic to last us for I think 727 years. I think there's going to be some people that are going to like in their will, right? And the Charmin extra double ply, triple ply toilet paper goes to my favorite grandson, Timothy. Timothy gets the toilet paper. Oh, grandma, come on.
Yeah, so I was shocked by the whole toilet paper thing. So when that happened, when the pandemic broke out, I was still on a plane. I was basically doing a world tour, and countries were shutting down behind me as I was flying home slowly, touching down on all these.
All right, so let me stop you. Here is why, if there was ever a military coup in America or any other first world country, if there was a coup attempt, we would all be screwed shitless. Sorry, I won't say your name. You're a LinkedIn user. Stay a LinkedIn user. I'm not trying to dox you or make fun of you. I promise, and I'm sorry. It's my passion. Here is why we can't imagine this scenario. And we are in cybersecurity, so a lot of people that are watching us are also in cyber. Here's the beauty of this, right? We are the shoemaker who's walking barefoot. I sell everyone on shoes, and I say how important it is for you to have shoes on, but then I'm walking home barefoot. And here's what I mean. We talk about incident response plans. We talk about having backups. We talk about having restores. We talk about recovery, right? And in cybersecurity, we talk about that significantly to our clients or to our companies as practitioners. And in our personal lives, we don't have an incident response plan for the day that we are held ransom by an unknown faction. We don't have a plan.
My colleagues use the same password, I know.
Right? And Danielle answered something somewhere in the tree that would have to call a different part of the tree just in case someone doesn't get the call and forward it.
Yeah. So I think what you mean, Danielle, is it breaks down very, very quickly, right? The phone.
Yeah, but that's why phone trees don't work. Like phone trees only work as long as the lady that watches it, right? So Benny says 100%. Hey, Benny, what's happening, man? Thanks for jumping on the show. Miguel also says true. And we're not looking for validation. I think the one thing is we do realize that this is all true. But we need to have these plans in place, right? Like I'm really now considering that next week we should do like an internet gone exercise, right? Like we're going to jump on the show and we're going to create an incident response plan for something like this, because I think that's really important. Like here we go. Smoke signals by Miguel. I absolutely agree. Yeah, smoke signals. There, the problem with smoke signals early on was that everyone was burning wood to stay warm. So the idea of smoke was never weird. Like that's one thing that Hollywood never gets right with smoke signals, like in the old movies, is everyone used smoke, right? So everyone used smoke.
How is it a signal?
So because the way the smoke comes out and then the way you build the fire and the way the pillars come and the way you fan it is a signal, right?
Coal or wood, it's a different, you get different color of smoke. Yeah.
Correct.
That way.
So right. There's a whole art behind smoke signals. But Miguel, here's the thing about smoke signals, buddy. I don't mean to crush your idea, buddy. I really don't. I appreciate you. I'm grateful to you. But I think that if I was to put up a survey, how many of you know how to start a fire on your own and use smoke signals on LinkedIn? It would be hilarious to see the answers.
It's probably not going to make it into our DR plan next week, but I love the effort. No, Miguel's joking. Yeah. I'd see the signal from my house, Miguel. It's all good. We'll signal each other and for steak. Almi here says, let's do it. Yeah, I absolutely agree. I think that's going to be our show next week. Brilliant. I love that. So Danielle, you've highlighted electricity, right? So this is what we should do our DR exercise on next week, right? Because that's the big a crutch for everybody around the world, right? Is an EMP. I think I used to know this. I'll get it for next week. If you have an EMP that is, I think, only like something like 3/4 of a mile, it's not very high up, which has a certain strength. I'm going to get all the statistics for this. Detonate that over the United States, and you will blow all the electrical grid. There, that's that, right? Very
Well,
interesting.
here's the good news. We're seeing that experiment done in Dallas, where they're out of they don't have any electricity in Texas because of the storms, right? And apparently, wind turbines don't generate winds when they get ice on the turbines.
So there was a massive ice storm in Quebec, Canada, many years ago, back when I lived in Alberta, and it went on for 3 weeks. No electricity. Really big deal in Canada, of course, because it's very, very cold. Now they managed to survive it. Here's what I thought was hilarious. Side note: 9 months later, what do you think happened? The hospitals were inundated with babies being born. so when you have a power outage and that's the only thing that's happening in a decent country, that's the problem.
Well, we're already seeing the COVID babies come out, right? Like now we're starting to see the first class of COVID babies, right, from the first quarantine. So Tim has something to say here. I love Tim. Thanks so much for coming on the show, man. So here's a funny thing. Tim says, should have a plan and also a back on protection and only tell who needs to know the plan. Yeah, I agree. That's the plan you gotta have. But very few people have it. Very few people have that plan. Very few people plan for it. Miguel's laughing out loud.
Well, and that's because, but even any plan, to Timothy's point, any plan is better than no plan. Because when you have no plan, this is what happened in the pandemic a year ago. People go right out and buy toilet paper. Do you know what I ran out and bought? Electrolytes. I wasn't sure what this disease was going to do. I'm thinking flu. People, my family's going to be puking. They're going to need electrolytes. So I bought a crate of electrolytes. And then I was shocked to realize that I couldn't buy toilet paper afterwards. But that's the point, right? If you don't have a plan, then you're going to panic. Yeah. So Timothy, great point.
Yeah. So let's build a plan. And I think that's what we'll do next week on the town square. We'll come out and we'll build a plan, kind of a incident response, a domestic incident response plan to the day.
For the comments, bring your plan to us. We want to see it. Now, it's going to be tough in the comments, but condense it as much as you can. Let's give it to us in a paragraph.
Well, if you got a really good plan, just DM me and I'll send you a link and you can join us on video. We can have up to 10 people on video. So we'll bring you all on. I don't really, care. Transparent plans practiced biannually. Yeah. Can you imagine like having to tell your kids, all right, kids, fire drill, time to plan for internet apocalypse. Here we go. Internet routers getting unplugged. No one has internet. Go.
And the kids are like, what? No TikTok? That's the end of my world.
Wouldn't that be?
How do I get TikTok back, Dad? That's what I'm going to hear.
Dad, do we have to do this again? Right? Do we? We did it 6 months ago, Dad. This is never going to happen.
Right. Don't let me have no TikTok for 5 minutes during this drill.
Right. But they're using the internet, by the way, also to spread disinformation. So in Turkey, one of the things that Erdogan did manipulate the internet at the time when they tried the coup attempt was he started putting out fake news of people getting arrested. And the other side was putting out news through their communication channels that they've arrested Erdogan. And so it's very interesting to see what's going to happen in Mynamar, but it's also damning the amount of silence, because that just tells you when no one's willing to condemn it, that anyone would do it. And I think that's the scary part to me, is I was hoping for more condemnation. That hasn't come through. Miguel says, meet at church in case of a zombie attack. Yeah.
Bring a lot of garlic.
I don't know. I think that's the first place zombies are going to go look for people.
Yeah, actually, and garlic's for vampires. Yeah, I don't know how we're going to solve for that problem.
Yeah. I mean, that's a very interesting thing, right? Is like, where would you go? Like, what's the safe haven?
Yeah.
Right?
That's right. This is why people have a cabin in the woods, right?
And people don't understand this with Myanmar. Myanmar was a sanctioned country. And then when Hillary Clinton was Secretary of State, and under President Obama, that was one of their foreign policy wins, was the ability to create a peaceful transition to elections and move that country towards a more democratic process. And then after that, things really got bad because there was a whole idea of ethnic cleansing that was going on there with the local population targeting the part of the Muslim population, and those people were going to. There was over 200 or 300,000 refugees that went into Bangladesh, which was another poor nation that couldn't handle the influx of refugees as well. I mean, this stuff is very, very damning. FYI, Tim goes, run out the city. Yeah, but where, Tim? Where are you going to go out the city? Right? I mean, the thing about it is the further off the grid you go, really in some of these cases, the more danger you are in. So there's a thing to be had around kind of that incident response plan. But yeah, I mean, that's kind of very interesting. I mean, I remember when the Turkish coup happened in 2016, I was in Turkey a few days before that. And there was nothing in the air that would tell you there is a coup coming.
Really? Wow. Yeah. Yeah, that is interesting. Because how do you keep that rumbling quiet? You know, you're talking. So with the Turkish coup, what was the size of the military that started rolling around? Are we talking thousands, tens of thousands, hundreds?
So
that quiet, right?
So here's the deal. I'm gonna go to what I wouldn't be against my better judgment, but I'm gonna go to Wikipedia to source this.
All right.
Okay. Now,
yeah, if there's thousands of soldiers and a few days before the coup, you're not hearing any rumblings at all, that really blows my mind, because this is where I separate from conspiracy theorists, right? The conspiracy theorist crowd always gets stumbled on this one challenge that I give them, which is that, hey, I can't even think of a group of 5 people that can keep a secret very well. And so if there's some conspiracy of something happening and it involves a whole whackload of people, it's just not a chance. There's just not a chance. Remember the game Telephone? You know, you played it as a kid. There's maybe 15 people at the table. You started a whisper with some kind of mildly complicated sentence for a bunch of 12-year-olds. And by the time it got back to the originator, it was a completely different sentence. And so, you know, people just can't keep that stuff straight. Actually, LinkedIn user said, didn't Erdogan nip it in the bud?
Yeah.
Away? Yeah.
Erdogan nipped it really, really quickly. But the way they did that is they started, or they sent them during the coup attempt. Soldiers went into Turkish radio and television stations, letting him know that there's about to be a change of power in the country, and they did that before they secured Erdogan. And so, and they had military jets flying over different parts of Ankara and Istanbul. Erdogan did a FaceTime interview with CNN Turk, and he told people to take to the streets in defiance of the military curfew. And the people went into the squares. I mean, a lot of Erdogan supporters at the time went into squares and did what they did, and they were able to nip it in the butt right away. But here's the interesting aspect of this. When he used social media, one, to communicate to the people and get them out. And then once he was hearing that people actually went out in support of him, he went through and got his loyalists, and they went through, and then he shut down all communications that everyone was using. And that's how they got the rebels. So the rebels, the people who were trying to overthrow the government, could no longer communicate.
Interesting, right? Yeah. Now,
Right.
here's okay. Give that go on that comment, and then I want to talk about Daniel and Nora's comment there. It's kind of interesting.
Yeah, so the show of force, yeah, I mean, they did do a show of force. They put tanks on bridges. There were people who were shot and killed as they were running up to soldiers. There were soldiers who were killed by mobs. But what happened after that, I think, is the scary part. So after that, they started arresting reporters, soldiers, business people, anyone who was in any point period in time connected to anyone that had anything to do with it. Now, there's a whole reason of why this failed. And there was a purge that was done after, by the way, which is eerily similar to some things we're seeing nowadays. So kind of keep that in mind. Is there comes a time where, in coup attempts, the price is really significant. Danielle here says, drive to Canada.
So drive to Canada, take the back roads. Okay, cool. Interesting, right? And we all look at Canada as being this kind of lovey-dovey.
I would never run to Canada. I would go to Mexico before I would go to Canada.
Well, because look at Nora's comment, right? The rural areas, we have to grow our own food. That's the problem with Canada, right? I lived there for 25 years. You can't grow anything. Maybe a little bit in BC and only a little bit of the year. But that's the issue with Canada. And the transportation, you got the Trans-Canada Highway, one massive road from east to west, a lot of back roads. I mean, if you drove the Trans-Canada Highway east to west, you'd be 4 days of nonstop driving, like 4 days of just gassing up and going.
But that's like Highway 80. That's like I-80 in the U.S. It takes you from New York to San Francisco.
My point, though, is that there's so much snow, and so you've got one chokehold. So it's a problematic country from that standpoint. It's a beautiful country. I live there. I'm still in love with it. I still hold my.
So I agree with Nora in that rural areas and villages will grow their own food. The problem that those places are going to have is in a coup attempt, people are going to come in and take that food. So there's that. Almi here says that Turkey is known for human rights violations. They absolutely are.
And it's also not just the people in the coup attempt that's going to take your food. It's the guy with the biggest gun who's hungry. Because when people get desperate and they want to feed their families, right, then there's a fight. And so you have to be prepared in that regard as well, right? You're going to have to be a little bit tough.
I can see Tim sitting in his basement, planning this thing. Your plan can't involve a car, no power, no gas pumps, no ATMs, nowhere with cameras.
Yeah, right.
You want to go off the grid, you put on your walking shoes and you start walking. And you start going through.
It gets scarier and scarier, doesn't it, when you start putting this plan together?
Well, it gets to the point where you kind of look at this and you go, yeah, it does. I mean, Almi says absolutely as well. I mean, that's part of it, though, right? I mean, you look at the kind of you think about this, and it's a very interesting topic because if we got out, we got up, we got out, internet shut down, things going to hell. How do we prep?
Timothy says, I love preppers.
Yeah, we all do. But you know what? We do it in our professional careers, right? In our jobs.
Yeah, that's true. I don't want us exactly. So we don't want to be labeled next week when we come on this thing as a bunch of hysterical preppers. I mean, and I know that's not what you mean, Timothy, but there is massive value to the fact to understanding what James just said. We prep all the time. I mean, this is what when we budget. You budget for your home accounts, right? Paying off a mortgage. This is all preparation for the future. Danielle says, visit my doomsday preppers friends. Bringing bullets. Right.
Good, because bullets is a very hot commodity. If you've got any you want to sell, we'll gladly take some off your plate. Bullets are a very hot commodity, but here's the beauty. If you learn how to make bullets, you don't need to go buy them.
So my question is then, how much do you prep? Where's the line of being a prepper, right? I don't want to be that guy, but I do want to be prepared.
Well, hang on. What's the stigma around preppers? Hang on. What's the stigma around preppers, right? I think the best So let's look at it from this. Everyone here has seen The Office, right? Big likes if you've seen The Office. Big likes, right? There's an awesome episode where Dwight is sitting in the break room and he's got all these canned goods. And he goes, this is my emergency stack in case of a zombie apocalypse, right? And Jim is sitting across from him. And he goes, so you're going to eat all this food today, and then you're going to buy new food tomorrow to last you another 8 years. And he goes, yeah. And he goes, so you could see a zombie apocalypse happening in a week? He goes, possible. A month? Possible. 3 months? I could see that happening. And, it goes on and on and on and on and on. And so you kind of, that kind of was like the make fun of preppers thing. But Dwight, by the way, was the ultimate prepper on The Office.
Yeah, right.
Right? I mean, he was the ultimate prepper, and he was the guy that always had something there when something happened. And so it's not about being a lunatic prepper. I think it's about being prepared to defend and communicate with the outside world when you're not given a chance. Miguel says here that when people in Venezuela tried to cross the border to Colombia to run away, the military stopped them. The military blocked all roads. Yeah, and you can expect Canada to do the same. Like, I don't think people understand. Like, it's not like the Canadians are going to be like, oh, look, it's Americans. Why don't we bring them into Canada? They're going to be like, screw you guys. I'm going home. Straight Cartman.
What they're doing with COVID. I mean, right? People are shutting their borders with a disease like COVID. And Miguel, who, by the way, is an awesome colleague of mine. Lives in New Jersey now, from Venezuela, so he understands a lot of this stuff firsthand. He's on the engineering side of our house. Awesome guy. Thank you for that, man. I'd love to see next week what you come to the table with, because you've lived through a few of these things. You've got relatives that have lived through them, and so and we've got Nora's quote up. What if we stay in bunkers and use the lanterns and save enough to preserve food? Yeah, for how long? But yeah, good point. It could be. You've got to tough it out and we get electricity back in a month. You could probably tough that one out. There'd be some few casualties, but you could tough it out for sure.
The question is, what do you come out to, right? Tim says you prep a little here and there. Most of it, just be thinking about what you would do. Yeah, you have to prep. You gotta always think of what you're going to be doing. That's absolutely right. Almi says you have some plan, but it's all in your head. The problem is you're at a single point of failure. And that's very true, especially if you have a family. And that's why it's critical to almost like share with the family, if something happens, here's where stuff is. Here's who grabs what.
Right. You just reminded me of something that's very simple, and I don't know any of my friends that do this, and I keep telling them. So I'll give you an example. We moved back to the United States. So we previously lived in Denver, BC, before children, and now my kids are, I've got teenagers and one who's in her 20s. We moved to the US here, and we have on our fridge emergency contact list. I keep it fresh. I update it once a year, right? I've got phone numbers, email addresses. If something should happen to mum and dad, right, we're away in the car, these are people you phone. It's such a simple thing. That's a preppy thing, right? Part of just prepping for everyday life. Yeah, absolutely. We're the single point of failures. Yeah.
Yeah, and then Danielle here has a really funny comment. Do you have an underground bunker? I think that's extreme. I don't know that having an underground bunker is extreme. I think that's called a basement.
Under the stairs of the basement. I have a friend, so I lived in Calgary, Alberta, and I have a friend up there who's a proper prepper. And so what he's got, he's actually got a cabin way up north, and he actually keeps a go bag in his shed at house, and he keeps a thing of gasoline there as well. And up at his bunker, which is a cabin, he does actually have gold and a few weapons and non-perishable foods. He's got it all up there. But he's also a nerd and kind of, gets off on kind of these kinds of preparations, and he's a super smart guy and he's ready. You know what? You shouldn't have told me it's there. That's the other part, right? Keep it to yourself because I'm coming. Daniel, in reality, having a hot site as a backup across the country isn't a bad idea. That's right. Exactly. To my point there, depending on how big the company is.
A lot of laugh out louds here.
It's true. This guy has Miguel. You know him. I'm not going to say who it is.
Well, we're nearing the end of our time for this week's show, folks, and
wow, that went by so fast.
It did. But so next week we already know what our topic is going to be. Right. We're going to create a incident response plan that we will attribute to everyone on the show. Everyone who participates, your name will be on this plan. I will brilliantly design our plan with the steps to take if you're ever cut off the internet and you need to get information. So that's the deal. We're not going down the zombie apocalypse and all the fun. And we're not going to go down any of those kind of like rabbit hole. Our incident response plan is what happens if you wake up one morning and you've got no access to any information. How do you get information to know what's going on? And I think that's going to be...
I'll match James's $10 Amazon gift card. So bring your friends, bring some ideas, throw in a paragraph. You've got to condense it. We won't be able to read a lot. A few of you, like the loyal listeners, DM James. He's going to bring you in on camera. We can discuss it with you as well. And just for fun, tell your buddies there's a $10 gift card in it for them as well. Let's have a little bit of fun next week.
Yeah, I mean, that $10 may not... that $10 will help you turn your cryptocurrency to cash. Although I would stick to crypto right now with the inflation we've got going on in this country and real estate and divest from cash. So anyone who's got cash, my recommendation is go buy something, gold, real estate, or crypto. And because we're looking at the next several years of very high inflation. The dollar's already worth crap, and it's going to be worth even less.
But I don't think crypto is going to be part of a DR plan. I mean, how are you going to spend
what? What do you mean? Why not?
Because how are you going to trade it if it all goes to the pot, right?
The only people that are going to accept the crypto are the people who are going to have the stuff who plan for it, who only take crypto because they realize that crypto isn't something that can be traced and they can...
There's going to be no electricity. So how are you going to trade the crypto?
You don't know that there's going to be no electricity. We know that there's going to be no internet.
Okay, so the DR. So for next week, let's get the rules set, and then we got to call it a day. So the DR plan for next week is no internet, not no electricity. That's what we're saying, right?
Correct. Electricity's fine. Water's fine. Everything is fine. No internet. You've got no social media. Google isn't working. You've got no access to information. What do you do?
Cell phones are still up as far as phoning, but you're not. Are we texting? Is it telco?
We can text, but remember, anything that you're doing, everyone can see at that point. So keep that in mind.
Right.
So all right. So we've got people that are looking forward to it. Miguel, yes, no internet. That is very, very difficult. Yes. And Nora, thank you so much for the compliment. I appreciate it. All right.
Beautiful. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much. I want the $10 gift card. Karen.
Seriously? So come with the best idea. And you can't steal any of my own.
That's fantastic. You might have to explain why that is.
Yeah, she can't have any of my own ideas.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for participating today and tuning in. This is really cool. The Tech Town Square, for me, it's kind of working, right? I think this is really great dialogue, great participation. Look forward to having a few of you on screen with us next week. And James, take it from here, my friend. All
right, folks, that's it for us today on today's show. Make sure to follow us on, if you're not connected with us on LinkedIn and you're just tuning in, make sure to connect and follow. We do the show live every Wednesday at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, which is magnificent. It's a great time for everyone. I know. I love it. And next week, we'll be talking about the incident response plan. So you guys are definitely going to love that. And until then, folks, stay safe, stay healthy. By the way, CISO Talk podcast, I had Brent Hudfless, the CISO over at Wind Creek Hospitality. And he brought up something very, very interesting. So I know there's a few CISOs watching us. Why don't we say we practice cybersecurity? What if we viewed cybersecurity as we viewed medicine? He goes, doctors kill patients. They don't get fired for killing a patient. It's part of it's occupational hazard.
Wow, what a great great thought.
So go in and watch the CISO Talk podcast with Brent. You guys are going to love it. The guy's brilliant. That's why I love doing this podcast. Awesome CISOs come on the show and share some really cool ideas with the community. Tomorrow, CISO Secrets is also going to be live with Max Garcia, the CISO over at NCR Financials. Max is unbelievable. We talk about transitioning from legacy to cloud and what that's like from an auditing and security perspective. So you won't want to miss it. So CISO Talk, catch Brent, CISO Secrets tomorrow with Max Garcia. You'll want to get that. Those two separate podcasts. Go and subscribe to both. And I'll be live again on LinkedIn tomorrow at 9 a.m. with the practitioner brief. So you'll see so much of me. You'll be sick of me. But then, I'm trying to get people like Eddie and different faces on the show as well. So that's it, folks. Thank you so much. Make sure to connect, follow. Until next time, we're signing out. Have a great rest of your evening.